Got ourselves a classic Mr. Hyde live 3-dimensional boob right there. Those who attend all the streams will know. We learnt that early on. Boobs are 3-dimensional. Important painting tip right there. Subscribe for more. Kingdom Death Monster Baby. We are back with one of my favorite sculpts of all, and that is the pin-up version of the Butcher, the first nemesis monster that you face. And I'm going to be doing something out of character here. This is not going to be a redhead. We're going dirty blonde with this, which is a color palette that I just thought would go really well with the eventual base that I'm planning on doing for this. I know, all things out of character, an actual base project as well as not red hair. But we're starting with some Xandri dust here, and I actually, in order to make this work and to make it not thick as hell, I went over that with about 3 separate coats. So 2 thin coats is out the door, 3 thin coats is in now, and that's just to make sure that there's none of that. You can see there the base coat showing through at the moment, through some of those areas of hair. And we've just got to get a really crisp, because we're not going like, this would be even more important if we were going like platinum blonde, but because we're going with like a dirtier sort of blonde color here, I need this base coat to be very, very clean and crisp, because I'm going to be using a wash and then essentially layering over the top. Now, that hair is taking a long, long time to dry, and so while that's doing that in between layers, we're getting the base layer on the gold, and we're going to give her gold boots, a gold mask, and a gold, I don't know what you call that, like an under-boob sternum sort of thing going on there, but we're essentially just layering up there with the base layer of gold, and gold on black always looks cool, so even now this is, you can see the sculpt there though is really fantastic, and we go over here now with that third base layer. Now this was painted live, and just so you're aware, I'm live now.
Let me show you something. Let me show you, are you ready? Because this viewers with a weaker constitution may wish to look away. This is, okay, hold on. This is the Pinup Butcher, right? This is her, yeah? This is the normal Butcher. What the fuck is this? Explain yourself. Why its hands doing that? What be the, look at this. This is beautiful. This brings joy. This does not bring joy.
So come on over, that's what you're missing. Don't be a stranger. But we did this all live, and it was a hell of a lot of fun. Despite all of my chats constantly telling me to add blood effects, which has become a meme, it was really fun. Now we're going over the gold here with some Agrax Earthshade. Just to, we're doing a full coverage here. I would sometimes recess shade this gold, but because of Kingdom Death and the nature of this model, we're going over it with a full, almost making it kind of like a weathering effect in its own little layer there. That'll be very subtle. We are then going to go over the hair with a Seraphim Sepia. Now, I'm doing this in a very, very light yet all over coat. And the brush that I've selected for this is a large synthetic that holds barely any of that wash. And the reason being, I want to avoid heavy pooling here. This needs to be subtle. So you see that area just up on the right there under the brush. I'm going to remove that when we come back to wick off the excess. But I'm being pretty sparing with this. This is going to be more thickness of this wash at the front here, where there's not as much light exposure. I'm okay with, but as you can see, I'm going back here now, and I'm going to be wicking out those areas where it's really pulled up, because this has to look like hair. It's not going to have big, massive divots of like darkness color in it, especially if she's going to be like that dirty blonde we mentioned. Now, we're going over this with a Skull Crusher brass, essentially just layering that gold up, making sure that we focus on the areas there which are exposed to the light. So that would be the outside of the shin here, and very much so the outside of this shin and knee pad there, just to bring up that gold and make sure that, because gold is very reflective, we're still going to highlight a little bit on the inside here, but almost the entirety of the outside of those areas will be layered up. And we'll be hitting that with a very, very small pinpoint and edge highlight later on. But you can see there the depth of field that just gave to those boots with those 2 quick steps while we were waiting for that hair to dry. Now, going through here, this was agony, but this is the it's going to be quite a thick layer of this. It's kind of a layered highlight, because we do a highlight after this, but it's very, very mild. Now, this is my first time trying to create this effect, and I was really happy with how it actually turned out. you can see there it's kind of like that dirty, ragged kind of hair. This is a hairstyle that befits a creature that lives in Kingdom Death and this slays men for a living. You know, like this is. She's not going to be exactly on like a Pantene hair commercial anytime soon. And I really wanted to represent that in like the grunginess of the blonde hair that's going to be coming out here. And this mix of ice yellow with Ushapti bone, aside from drying so fucking quickly, was very good. It was very much what I was looking for. Now, one thing to mention when you're working with something like anything basically with a higher or light value or pigment, lighter pigments in it, like that layer and like this layer of Screaming Skull, the paints dry very quickly, and if they dry in the bristles of your brush, not only is that really bad for your brush, but you'll lose a lot of tip control and everything like that on your brush. So it's really important, and what you don't see here is that I'm actually rinsing the brush out quite a lot. I'm only doing 2 or 3 passes before I go and then sort of rinse the brush off and retip it. But that has all given way to my favorite part here. It is painting skin, baby. That's what pinups are all about in Kingdom Death. And this one is a beauty. So we are starting off, we're doing the same sort of skin mix that we do always, starting off with a reddish hue, making it look alive. That reddish base coat there is essentially going to provide us with a more realistic living creature look, even if we push it really pale, which I intend to do, because it's going to contrast really nicely with her base and it will match her hair. So this base coat here, and you can see just with that base coat how much that's brought the mini to life, but we've got a lot more yet to do. So layer 1 is going to be essentially base coat 2 electric boogaloo. Like you're only really not highlighting here the very darkest places. So in between the legs, sort of under the arms, that kind of thing. Other than that, we're just solidifying our skin tone here. And this is going to be essentially, aside from those very select areas, the darkest color of her skin. She is going very, very pale here. And you'll see as we highlight up how we do that. Now, we're going with long sort of brush strokes there to try and avoid any sort of pooling or misbehaving paint, because we don't want to apply too much texture to these areas until the highlights. Now, this is what I would consider layer 2. This is not yet a highlight, but you're definitely picking out more of the areas where the light will be exposed. Keeping in mind that on a very feminine figure like this, so you're working with lots of natural curves, pick a light source. Top right is easy if you don't, if that's the home run swing of most people, and that is in fact what I have picked here as well. But you're not going to be too aggressive with this last layer here. This is allowing a platform for your highlights to go on that isn't going to make them sort of stand out too aggressively. Now, you can see there that I'm starting to pick out a little bit more of this raised area on the right there, where she's sort of like popping that hip. That is going to receive most of the light. So it's going to be not so much on the outer side of this thigh, but more on the inner side of this thigh and the outer side of the other, where that hip is elevated. Now, going through here and creating that layer is going to allow me now, you can see there, is going to allow me now to actually start putting the highlights and the blending layers on. Now, these highlights, I am a lot more sparing, and these are where you have to really start to consider how light actually hits something, especially something like skin. So a softer profile like this and where the light is hitting, you're almost always going to have like an ovoid kind of shape to the light. So it will be kind of keeping your lines away from being like blocky and square. Curved edges basically is what I'm trying to say. But in these ones here, we're starting to leave notable amounts in the recesses there, and really starting to, with the highlights, as the name suggests, it's not a layer. You're picking out the high parts of the model. Now, I'm going through and stippling that area there, but there will also be some glaze blending that goes on in between layers here. And that's very, very, like you see here, that's very important in terms of skin, in terms of blending in everything naturally and not making it look like you've just sort of tattooed it onto the onto the miniature. So we're leaving a little bit in the recess there. She's under the sort of lower stomach area. We're going to blend that a little bit, but it's just really to bring that up so that they can tell that the light source is from top right. Now, this is the last highlight here, and the last highlight it always looks very aggressive when you actually put it on, but then when it dries, because you should be thinning your paints, and also the chameleonic effect of having the previous layer mixed into the highlight, you just keep adding more paints to it, means that it will actually blend a lot more subtly. So don't freak out if you apply it on first and you're like, holy shit, this is going to look, she's going to look like a fucking Dalmatian. No, that will not happen, and you'll be able to blend anything down that you need to as well. Now, you can see here that I'm just doing it's basically a smaller version of what we did before, and I actually separate there the two parts of the stomach. You can see there sort of the top two kind of abdominal area and then the lower stomach. I separate that out only with this highlight because I don't want that to be super aggressive. If she had sort of like rippling six-pack or something, we'd be talking about this a few layers before, but here we're just creating the natural play of light on her sort of, it's a very normal stomach, so we're not working with a ripped six-pack or like a pendulous paunch, so we're not doing anything too fancy there. It's just natural human definition. And of course, not forgetting, it's all about the legs and the stomach here in this because that takes up most of the model, but also highlighting your other parts there as well. We've got a lot to consider into where the eye of the viewer will be drawn, and that's where we focus most of our attention. So for the butcher here, it's going to be the hair, the cleaver, and the hips. But there's also, obviously, we're in the background highlighting up everything else. We're now going to do the metal layers, and we're giving her some pretty fancy boots here, I won't lie. The gold and silver, whew, kind of styling on them. But in between, while I'm waiting for that silver to dry, you see me doing glaze blending on that skin. And it's because in order to glaze blend properly, you must let the previous blend layer dry completely before you go again with the glaze blend. Because you're working with so much of a watered down pigment, if you rush it, you will simply just move the pigment again and it will bunch up and clump and it will look like chalky and gross, especially with white pigment paints. But now we're back to the metals. And we're going through here, picking out all the rims to the lanterns, everything like that. We have got some fancy stuff to do with the lanterns later on in terms of the hair, but I just wanted to get that hair out of the way because fuck, that took a long time with all those strands of hair. Now, we're also going to now pick out this part here. This was what I call high-stakes poker. So this was doing the Bugman's Glow base layer on the skin bikini. I don't know what you call this. It's a human face stretched over as bikini bottoms, and then she's got one on her thigh there as well, which we'll be doing. She's also got a human face in the jar that she's holding. That's not a lantern, unlike most things in Kingdom Death. That is a human face in a jar, so we address that as well. Now, her axe being a focal point, I wanted to do something cool or special for this. Now, it is metal, but in all of the art and stuff like that, it's a red butcher's cleaver, so all of the equipment cards. So I wanted to do something cool and almost like a heated metal or just something like demonic looking for this, because this butcher is supposed to have gone insane, you know, and just kills people just for looking at her. So I'm layering from quite a deep red to just a straight up orange, but the orange will be only at the very tip of the blade. And we're essentially just going with that deep red and adding a little bit of orange for each layer and reducing the amount we cover. And it ends up producing this really cool gradient effect where it almost looks like the blade is like alive. You know, it has like a warmth or like a fire to it that I really ended up liking. So in terms of the blade here, this was a lot of fun. And you can see me just adding the actual just straight up orange. You could have gone an even brighter with this to like an ice yellow or something like that, but I'm still trying to keep in mind that we are painting a Kingdom Death monster figure, and nothing here is bright and happy and explosive like the color palette. Nothing to stop you from painting like that, but the color palette I try to keep to the environment. So you can see there that the cleaver really took shape as we're painting the bone vertebrae on top, and we're doing the base coat on her helmet and her pauldron here as well. Also the horns all around the place that get a good bone covering. Have to do about 2 or 3 layers of bone over black. There is an argument for me to have base coated this a different color, considering I went with blonde hair and like there's so many light colors on here. But for the particular hue of skin that I wanted, I just am more comfortable working with black. Black is also a much more forgiving undercoat. Don't ever forget that. If you leave a recess unpainted with white, it looks like shit. Where if you do it with black, it looks like an intentional blacklining artistic choice. So no matter what you're painting, as a beginner, I always recommend that you do unless you're painting with contrast paints and doing speed painting, which I will be doing on a video in the future, but I always recommend that black base coat. So just doing the base coat there on the horns, and you can see here at the end of day one of our painting session there, which we all did live, that's where we ended up. Now we're about to have a bit of a time skip here, so excuse the sudden amount of progress that's made. And also, yes, she has a plastic implement lodged there, and that's essentially because I wanted space, and there was a little bit of a play on the model that I could push it into the hip, and I wanted the space there while I was doing the bandages and everything on the other side of her arm, so just lodged it there with some plastic. Now you see me going around here and doing essentially the metal highlights. There is going to be a separate part where I do the gold highlights, and the gold highlights are going to be silver. But these metal ones we're just picking out very similar in line to where we did the highlight layer for the gold. Exactly the same in terms of where that light will be hitting. Now, we're going to do the same with the lanterns. Again, the lanterns here are very, very easy. We're just doing the ridges on the lanterns and the straight up rims that are around them. Just highlighting it a little bit with that gold. Now, my secret recipe for wraps, which is just not secret, it's just me being very lazy, unless it's the focal point of the model, is just going to be deck tan and then Nuln Oil and then highlight back up with deck tan, which is exactly what we're doing here. But this gives you a little bit of a look as to why I wanted that little bit of plastic there to push her arm in for a second so that I could get a finger rest there as well. This is, again, high stakes poker. This is the medallion around her neck. And this was, if I slip or do anything, I have completely fucked the skin and I don't have the mix. So that would have been a disaster. But as you can see, I'm a fucking monster and I get it the first try. But that was a moment right there. Now we're going through and we're going to be doing the face in the jar. And for me to do that, I'm going to create a sort of... look, I assume that the face in the jar is relatively fresh if she's holding onto it. So I'm going to put a bit of blood for the blood god on there and have it like a vial of blood with the face floating in it, like she's just cut it off. We're highlighting up the brown here. You can see I've highlighted up the bone there as well. Essentially doing a Ushabti bone base coat, hitting it with a contrast paint, and then layering back up with Ushabti bone and Screaming Skull. This is that little silver highlight that I mentioned, and this adds so much to the gold because it makes it actually feel truly reflective, because your highest points, the highest value of light reflected from a truly polished gold, will actually be silver or white. So in this setting here, I'm going for silver, but there is an argument to highlight all the way up to white, especially with NMM. We're going over those bandages again, picking those areas out, especially in the more prominent areas like her legs, where there'll be lots of exposure to the light. And again, not a very difficult recipe for that little mix of things. Now, the lantern body base coat here. So this is going to do two things. It's going to establish, obviously, the base coat on that lantern, but it will also give you the value to which the glow effect cannot be brighter than. The source is always going to be brighter than the glow. So I wanted to go pretty bright with that because you've got blonde hair, and I needed enough room to move with the colors and the spectrum of colors that I could do a glow effect with like a fire dragon bright, like a very bright orange, and it would still be visible on her blonde hair without it just looking like I had fucked up the blonde hair and joined a whole bunch of strands together. So you can see here now I'm just putting in the details of the face, going over the face with a couple of flesh layers, building it up. I'm always of the persuasion that you want to build your flesh layer on your model, and then any flesh that they've got on them. We had Aeneas's shield, for example, which was covered in flesh. You want to make it a different flesh recipe, essentially, to stand out. Otherwise, it looks like she's just holding her own skin, which is fucking weird. Now we're putting in the struts to the lantern. We're going straight to a brighter metal color here because these ones are, these little metal parts to the lantern are right where the light source is coming from. So they would be the brightest. And we're doing a little bit of a fur highlight. She's got like a bit of fur that's sort of strapped onto her arm there. We just did our standard recipe of fur with Xandri Dust and Ushabti bone on that one. And we lay it up. As I said, that was really boring to watch, so I won't put you through that. But it was a whole bunch of glaze layers of Fire Dragon Bright, and it's just drying now, that last layer. And by popular demand, we have some footage of me basing something. Now, I went with the Butcher here of sculpting my own base because the Pinup Butcher comes on a small model base, but I wanted a large one so she's actually playable because she has a blind spot of 2 spaces behind her. And you can see there I've done pools of blood. That was blood for the blood god with a bit of clear acrylic that I've cured. And then I'm basically going to paint up this like stone and earth and then do the skulls and stuff that are on that bit on the front right-hand side of the base. But I just wanted something that was going to be, really, really like macabre and just... This is the Butcher. This is what she's here to do. This is what she's about. So there's lots of blood, lots of gore, and I think it actually came out really nicely. This was one of those paint jobs that initially I fucking hated, but that's your when you create something as an artist, but you know what I mean. It's pretty common that you actually hate it, and then it took me a couple of days, but I actually ended up really liking it. So come stop on by. We're going to be doing some speed painting soon. I might do a couple of other big projects, but everyone's always welcome. We had a hell of a lot of fun painting this one live, and until then, I will see you guys next time.